Hello, everyone, and welcome to the QT2 Systems, My Greatest Moment podcast series. My name is Reem Jishi, and I'm the content director for QT2 Systems. With me today is our featured athlete, Kristin Evans. Welcome, Kristin. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
All right, so the series is called My Greatest Moment. So let's just start first with what is your greatest moment?
I think my greatest moment in triathlon actually was showing up to the Masters swimming pool for the first time, having never swam for speed in my life and not knowing anyone. Kind of what that did was I got through that day and I showed up the next day. And I think that decision of showing up the next day kind of just snowballed for me and led me into where I'm at today with the sport. So I think it was probably like one of the most defining moments.
Wow. So when you showed up to that master swim practice, was your goal, okay, I'm here because I want to do triathlon? Is that what sent you there, or is it something else?
Sort of. I mean, I came through triathlon from a different path. Back in late 2018, my wife came to me and my best friend with this harebrained idea to go to Nepal and do a 2.5-week trek through the Himalayan mountains to Everest Base Camp. And at the time, I didn't have any sort of like structured exercise or training and had no idea. And my wife had started already swimming at Masters and had met Stephanie, who's my coach now. And I needed someone who helped me get ready for this Everest trip. And she recommended I talk to her. So I did. And we spent several hours together kind of going over things, and she's like, all right, well, why don't you maybe think about triathlon? And I was, I'm kind of game to do anything, and I'm always up for a challenge, and I knew how to ride a bike. So I was like, okay. She's like, well, okay, well, you need to show up to Masters tomorrow morning. I'm like, I really had probably less than 24 hours notice, and I knew how to swim for fun and not drown, but I certainly did not know how to swim in a pool with freestyle and for speed. So that's kind of what led me to that point.
All right. So this path is not very direct. So I just
No.
okay. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right. So your wife comes up with the idea to do a 2.5-week trek. You hadn't really been exercising with any sort of structure before this idea came up. Okay. So you said, all right, I need to train for it. I've got a year to train for it. How am I going to train for it? Stephanie Davis, QT2 coach, her name comes up. And she says, I think you should train for your Nepal trip by doing triathlons.
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a conversation about what I've been interested in and things like that. I mean, it wasn't like completely out of the blue, but it was definitely not anything I'd ever done before. Okay. I wasn't a swimmer. I was kind of sort of a mountain biker. And my experiences with running up to that point had mostly just been painful. So
it was just more you were kind of looking for a way to get fit and prepared for the trip and kind of coming up with different ideas about how that might.
Right. Yeah. I needed to stay motivated, just keep training for this trip because it was so far in the future. And I do have a bit of a competitive streak in me. So it kind of sort of fit, although I don't think I really knew what I was getting myself into when I started.
Okay. All right. So you have this long conversation with Stephanie. She convinces you, well, you decide based on this conversation, you're going to give triathlon a try. You got to show up in the pool. So tell me about that first day.
Oh man, I was so nervous, just to walk out on the deck and just in my bathing suit, it just felt so weird. I felt so out of place. I didn't know what I was doing. And I got in, they had me in the very first lane, the wall lane, which I didn't really understand the significance of that. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And I have a ladder. And I mean, I was so intimidated in this beautiful pool. It was just like Olympic style pool. It was just beautiful and huge. And anyway, so I get in and she basically just starts having me swim to see what I look like. And apparently it was terrible. From what I was told, it felt pretty terrible. I think I needed to stop along the wall at least once or twice, and definitely at the end of the line or at the wall when I got to the end before I came back. I thought I was going to drown. I was so exhausted by the end of that first day. but also kind of intrigued. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but like, this wasn't that bad. It wasn't horrible. Nobody laughed at me. Like, okay.
Okay.
So I came back 2 days later.
Okay. Well, that's something, because you could have easily said, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. But there was something about it that, I mean, challenge accepted, right?
Absolutely. And I don't tend to take no for like, I can't do something. Like, somebody tells me I can't do something, my general response is to prove them wrong.
Mhm.
And I definitely had this more of an internal dialogue of like, I don't know if I can do this. You know, I'm not an athlete, I'm not a swimmer, I'm not a, you know, whatever, fill in the blank. But it was also kind of like, no, I'm gonna do this. You watch me.
Yeah.
So some of it's just stubbornness.
Well, that's okay. I had once where I had a personal training client. She walked in and I trained her for like 20 minutes, and she had to go down the stairs after the session. She went down crab-legged at a time, like on her butt. And as she's going down the stairs, I say, okay, if she comes back, she's in. And I
Hmm.
wasn't sure if she was going to come back or not. And that, like, what you
Yeah,
just said sort of reminded me of that. But once she did come back, then she was in, she was game. And it was
yeah.
like, that was the beginning. But that, I think the decision to come back is harder than the decision to go for the first time in some ways. But, you know,
It is, you know, I think for at least the first 3 months, I didn't like it really. I was frustrated and annoyed and like, you know, I remember having several days in the locker room trying not to cry because I felt like I was so bad at this, you know, and it's frustrating. It was also a lesson in being patient with myself and that beginner process. And, you know, because, you know, it didn't come easy to me. So I had to like be okay with like sucking at it for a little while.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So you did that, and eventually you signed up for a race. So what was the first?
Yeah, my first race was a sprint triathlon in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is a kind of a tourist sort of town. And there was a car show that same weekend, so there were hundreds of classic cars there, just to kind of put the traffic into perspective.
Mhm.
So it was a sprint. So the swim was supposed to be 250-meter indoor swim. You get out, you run outside, you jump in the outdoor pool and do 250, and then you get on your bike. But the outdoor pool was under construction. So it was literally a 250 meter swim inside with lane lights. It was so strange. So we had to jump in, and it was only like waist deep. So it's like 3 feet. And you had to duck under the lane lines going back and forth. And there were
I've
people
always like that.
walking the swim,
Yeah.
like running into people because they were walking. It was so strange. I think the whole swim took me like 2 or 3 minutes, which, you know, it was crazy. And then the bike, it was 16 miles, kind of hilly. I was on this kind of hybrid bike that was more of a commuter bike. So it had like skinny tires on it, but it was more, it had a straight bar mountain bike thing. It was not built for this. I was so uncomfortable by the time I got back and a little freaked out because like of all this traffic that we were also dealing with because it wasn't a closed course. And then I get on the run, and it's a 5K run. And I remember thinking halfway through the 5K, I'm like, this stinks. Like, I'm not going to finish. This is hard. Like, I'm only halfway through this. And anyway, and I keep going, and I finally crossed the finish line. And I mean, I cried because I never in my life thought I was capable of doing anything like that. And I just remember that moment of just like, oh my God, what did I just do? And I think that helped open a lot of doors for what I thought was possible after that too.
Yeah. All right. So what came after that?
I did another sprint, and that was local here in Chattanooga. And I'll mention that one just because the swim was very interesting for me. I had never done any open water swimming in a race. I'd done some practice stuff before that, and it stormed the night before. So the race morning, it's really gray and kind of cloudy and crummy looking outside. And the storm had moved all the swim buoys for sighting. So instead of a 800-yard swim or 800 meter, whatever, it ended up being close to a mile.
Oh my
I
God.
was in that water forever.
That's a bad mistake. Okay.
Yeah, so I was literally one of the last people out of the water. I thought I was never going to get back. And I remember having a backstroke at a certain point, trying to get my anxiety under control. And I made the mistake of starting at the back of the pack. So I was really, really last at that point. But I finished that one as well. And I think that was in probably, that would have been May, I think, May of 19. And then October rolls around. So the rest of my summer was spent doing training specifically for Nepal, which involved a lot of hikes on the weekends, like 12 and plus hour hikes and such. And so we went to Nepal, and we rocked that trip. I mean, we were both really ready for it. It was amazing, beautiful place to be, and then to get there on your own 2 feet after a couple weeks of hiking and such, because you can't get there unless you pay for a helicopter. There's no cars, so it's like you really have to work for it. It was just an absolutely life-changing trip.
Wow, that's awesome. Ooh.
Yeah.
So you did that. You got to the Everest Base Camp, 2.5 weeks of hiking, really really intense, and you said you felt ready for it with everything between.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was ready for that. They make you go pretty slow. So, but that doesn't really, you have no idea, like being at 16,000 feet, 17,000 feet of elevation. It doesn't really matter how slow you go. It's hard. But I was definitely felt ready.
Good. So you came back from that, and then what was next for you?
I think before I had left, I had decided I was going to go ahead and do a half Ironman. So I think I had signed up for the Chattanooga half Ironman 2020, and then it got delayed. Right. So I didn't do it in the spring. It was supposed to be in May, and then COVID happened. So I did a couple aqua bikes over the summer, local ones that were half iron distances. Finally got to do the half Ironman in the fall. And it was hot, and it was hard, but not quite as hard as I thought. Right. And I finished it, and, running down that finisher chute, and how awesome and amazing that was. All the people screaming. I'm like, oh, we can do more than this. We can do more than this. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would be someone capable of doing an Ironman. I always held those people up, on this lofty, place. And so I signed up for Chattanooga. It's an easy race for me logistically because I live here, and I know knew the course upside down and backwards. And so the following year, so that would be 21, I did the half Ironman again here in Chattanooga, and then I did the full Ironman in the fall, and then I finished the season with another half Ironman down in Florida.
So if I'm counting your timing correct, you basically went 3 years from not really knowing how to swim and having to hold on to a lane line to get to the end. Well, first of all, showing up, then then struggling through, then coming again and again and again, and then 3 years later, you're not.
3 years later, I have finished 3 half Ironmans and 3 full Ironmans, all within the last year and a half.
Yeah. So when you crossed that finish line in Chattanooga for the full, did that feel different to you?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it was surreal. You get to the end of an Ironman marathon, and I mean, your legs are cooked, right? But you come down that finisher chute, and all of a sudden you got wings, and it's just like all those people screaming for you, they don't even know you. And then I have it was my first one, so I had all kinds of family and friends there, and to see them when I was done and hear my name get called, and I mean, I just burst into tears. There's a whole series of pictures of me coming across the finish line, ugly crying. Because it was just overwhelming, sense of accomplishment, of joy, of support, of feeling strong, and just amazed at what my body and my mind could do. And I think I was really hooked at that point.
Yeah. Well, so I was going to say, was this a one and done for you, or was there, how are we going on after that?
Well, yeah, so no, it was not a one, and I was definitely all in probably before I even got to that point. I think I've thrived on the structure and the competition and the improvements I've seen in myself. But yeah, so after that, I coming into this past year, did the Chattanooga half Ironman, and then again, and then I did the full in the fall again. So I did the half and the full 2 years in a row, and then I kind of split the difference this past year. And in July, I did Lake Placid full Ironman.
So you like to climb. That's
Yes.
what you like to go to.
Yes. I don't know that I would do 2 Ironmans 2 months apart again. That was a little rough on the body, but I'm sure happy that I did that. I wasn't sure I could, and that was kind of the point. I was like, oh, let's just see if I can do this.
Wow. All right. So that was a huge season. So yeah, those are pretty tight together. And Lake Placid this year, Lake Placid was crazy hot.
Oh my gosh. I had gone out there in the month before to do a training weekend with QT2 and loved it. The bike course was amazing. But yeah, the conditions I found on race day were just not quite what I expected. It was the toughest race I've ever done to date, mentally and physically. I'm grateful that I finished that race, because I think a lot of people didn't, and I saw a lot of people tapping out.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Ironman is such an incredible strain on the body in the best circumstances. Add that to it, so it just makes you stronger. And you don't. I can. So, all right, so that gets us to Lake Placid and Chatty. So that was 2 months ago, not even quite 2 months ago. It was Chattanooga.
Yep.
What do you have on tap for next year?
Well, I am starting the season off in February with my first ultra run. It's 33 miles. And it was not something that I really thought I was ever going to want to do, but I had a friend who all she had to do was just twist my arm just a wee little bit, which she didn't even really have to do that. So I'm doing that. And then my big challenge for this year is I'm doing the Chiaha Extreme Triathlon down in Delta, Alabama in June. So that is a mostly full distance race, and so it starts with 2.4 mile swim. We start in the dark, and then the bike is close to Ironman distance, maybe 106, 110 miles, something like that. But 15 or 10,000 feet of elevation gain on the bike, and then the run is a 23 miles, and it's a mixed surface between road and trail with 5,000 feet. And then for that race, it's you have to have your own crew and plan your own logistics and things like that. So there's that element as well.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, swim in the dark. Is that part of the extreme concept? I mean, how do you
I guess maybe I don't really, I'm not worried about it. I don't, maybe for some people it would be, but I don't expect it to be super cold or anything. Some of these extreme triathlon races are really cold. But this is Alabama in June, so it can't be that bad.
So going to be a full moon. Like, obviously.
I don't know. I think everybody does the swim buoys with the light up glow sticks so you can see things. Yeah. Don't lose anybody.
Okay. Well, that's okay. And then, so how does it work? Because what you just described sounds like an ultra race to me a little bit in terms of having your support. So how do they find you along the way? Do you wear a tracker that they can figure it out, or just?
Well, I have my cell phone, so that's a big difference between this and Ironman. I'm required to have a cell phone with a backup charger, so there's that. And then I was considering actually doing one of the Garmin InReach or a Spot or something like that, so that there was no question about where I am, or if I needed help or something.
Yeah.
So,
all right, that makes sense. Cool. So, how big of a race is that?
Not big at all. I think there were maybe 20 people signed up last year, and 15 or 16 finished.
Wow. Okay. That's completely different than
it's much smaller
race.
So the top winner overall was female last year, which is amazing. And she did it in 14 and a half hours or so, just to kind of put it into perspective a little bit with Ironman.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot longer.
longer, spend a lot of it in the dark.
Yep.
So what made you want to do, because that's I mean, distance wise, yeah, they seem similar, but as you described, they seem like it's comparing a marathon to an ultra. So that's
Yeah.
a totally different mindset and approach to it. So what made you decide to give this one a try?
Well, I'm always looking for like, okay, well, what's the next thing? I did 2 full Ironmans in 1 year. It's like, okay, well, I did that. What's next, right? What's the next challenge, the next thing higher up? And the other part of it too is I wanted an experience that was a little bit less curated and catered to. Ironman has been fantastic, and I very much appreciate all the structure and support that they provide the athletes. But I wanted something like, I want to be a little bit more in control of this. And so the idea of having to plan the logistics and have a team to work with and all of that aspect of the race just kind of really gets me excited. And being a much smaller community, you could actually get to know, all the competitors on a first name basis,
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So when you showed up to the pool on that first day, did you dream that this is where you would?
No, I never even dreamed I could even finish an Ironman, or let alone start one at that point, let alone be doing this, planning this race in June. I mean, no, not at all. I never thought that, I could show up to the pool and actually enjoy Masters like I do today. And, I actually can, get down the lane at a pretty decent clip, look pretty decent. So it's been such a huge difference in such a short amount of time. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. I want to do like a time lapse. Right. To do that.
There probably is, because Stephanie has been with me from the very beginning with this, and she now coaches me for Masters, and I'm sure there's video from the beginning somewhere between the two of us. We could probably do that. That would be hilarious.
That would be really fun if you did that.
Yeah,
to see the differences. I mean, but you feel them anyway,
like absolutely
they are. So that's awesome. I mean, this story, all these stories have been, everyone I've talked to has been really interesting, but I love that you took the different bent. Like most people focus on this is my end, but you started at what began it all, what the thing was. If you hadn't shown up to the pool that day, none of this would ever, we wouldn't be talking right now and having
absolutely not.
You get ready for just another amazing adventure, that's coming up for you. So
well, and I think one of the more profound things I've gotten out of all of this is I finally have taken on the identity of being an athlete, and that took me up until last year, till finishing an Ironman to like fully get that for myself.
Yeah. So you weren't, growing up at all then?
Not at all. I was the nerdy kid who was getting straight A's and doing Beta Club and National Honor Society. And if you threw a ball to me, I would probably drop it, which I still would today. Any sport that involves a ball, I'm terrible, but to have that as a strong part of my identity for something I never thought was possible for myself is a pretty amazing place to be in.
That's great. Wow. Kristin, thank you so much for taking the time. It's just a really exciting journey, and you're just starting. I mean, I just want to see what you're going to do, but amazing. I love that you have,
thank you.
Your whole perspective of yourself has changed, and you've grown through this, and just by taking that first leap. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And then having the support and guidance from people like Stephanie and my swim coach and my wife and my friends. I mean, it's all a big team who's kind of got me here to this point. So it's definitely not me alone.
Oh no, and it never is though, but you believe in yourself, people believe in you. So that's, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Keep us posted on where you go. Okay.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.